All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about something that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. We're going to explore how we're teaching computers to read and understand the most complicated, the most important language in the universe, our own DNA. This is going to be fascinating, so let's get into it. So I want you to start with this one big idea. What if our DNA, those 3 billion letters that make you, what if it's not just a string of code? What if it's a book? You know, the book of life, complete with its own grammar, its own syntax, and a whole lot of hidden meaning we're just now starting to uncover. And here's the wild part. For decades, scientists could really only make sense of about 2% of that book, the parts that actually code for proteins. The other 98%? Well, that's been a massive mystery. It's like having a giant instruction manual where you can only read a few pages. The rest, the grammar that holds it all together, has been almost completely dark to us. And that gets us to the heart of the problem, right? How in the world do you decode a language when you don't even know the rules? How do you figure out how a sentence on page 1 connects to an action on page 500? I mean, think about it. This is not a simple A to B instruction manual. Our DNA has these things called regulatory elements. You can think of them as genetic light switches, these enhancers and promoters. And they can be millions of letters apart from the gene they control, but they still have to talk to each other perfectly to turn things on and off at just the right time. Our old methods, well, they just couldn't see these long-distance relationships. It was kind of like trying to understand a novel by only reading 3 words at a time. You just miss the whole story. So how do we crack this puzzle? Well, researchers had an absolutely brilliant idea. What if we could take the same kind of AI that powers large language models, you know, the tech behind things like ChatGPT, and just point it at the text of our DNA? And that's exactly what they did. This gave birth to what we now call genome language models, or gLMs for short. These are AIs built for one specific purpose, to read DNA and RNA sequences just like they're a biological language. And the really critical part is they learn all the rules, the grammar, the context, all by themselves without human supervision, just by plowing through massive amounts of raw genetic data. This slide here, it maps out the whole process perfectly. You see, it's a journey. You start with the data. That's the raw material. The genomes from us, from other animals, even viruses. It's the library the AI is going to read. Then, in the middle, you have the training. The AI starts off knowing nothing, and it pre-trains on all that raw data, just learning the basic grammar of life. Then it gets fine-tuned for specific jobs. And finally, at the bottom, the application. That's the payoff, where the super smart AI can be used to understand everything from how our cells work to the tiniest details of our genetic code. So how does an AI actually do this? How does it learn to read the A's, C's, T's, and G's of our DNA? Let's break down the mechanics a bit. Okay, it really boils down to 2 key ideas. First, the AI needs a brain. That's its architecture. Think of models like a transformer or the newer Mamba architecture. Second, and this is just as important, it needs a way to actually see words in that super long, unbroken string of DNA. And that process, it's called tokenization. Tokenization is literally the first step. Before an AI can learn grammar, it has to know what the words even are. Is a word just 1 letter, a group of 3, maybe 6? This step is absolutely critical because it defines how the AI even perceives the genetic code it's trying to learn. And there are a few different ways to do this. Some models use what's called K-mer tokenization. It's simple. It just chops up the DNA into words of a fixed length, like, say, every 6 letters is a new word. But the more advanced methods, like something called Byte Pair Encoding, or BPE, they're way smarter. The AI actually learns the most common and meaningful words all on its own, creating a vocabulary that's way more efficient and biologically relevant. This slide does a brilliant job of showing the 2-stage training process. So look at part A. This is called self-supervised pretraining. The AI is basically given a huge chunk of DNA with pieces missing, kind of like a fill-in-the-blanks puzzle. Its only job is to guess the missing letters. By doing this millions and millions of times, it learns the fundamental grammar of DNA, all without any human-provided labels. Then in part B, you take that pre-trained model, which is already pretty smart, and you fine-tune it with a smaller, specific data set to get it to master a particular task, like finding the on switch for a gene. It's a really elegant system. So, okay, the AI has learned the language. What's the payoff? This is where it gets incredibly exciting. This is where we see how all this training actually translates into real-world breakthroughs. Just take a look at this. This slide gives us a breathtaking overview of what is now possible. Once a model understands the language of DNA, you can fine-tune it for this incredible variety of tasks. It's not just one tool, it's a foundational platform for a whole new era of biology. Let's zoom in on just a few examples to see what this really means. Okay, first up, variant effect prediction. Think about this for a second. Imagine being able to predict, just from the DNA sequence, whether a tiny typo in your genes, a single letter change, is harmless or could lead to a serious genetic disease. Instead of taking years in a lab, an AI can now give us a probability score, instantly. Models are already doing this for billions of possible human variations, and that is paving the way for true personalized medicine, where treatments can be tailored to your unique genetic code. But it gets even more amazing. We're now moving from just reading DNA to actively writing it. That's right, generative models can be asked to design entirely new biological parts from scratch, like a promoter that only turns on a gene in a specific type of cell, or a brand new enzyme that performs a novel function. This is a total game changer for synthetic biology. We're talking about AI-designed medicines, biofuels, and materials. And finally, this brings us full circle. This brings us right back to solving that original mystery of the 98% of our DNA. These models can now scan those vast, non-coding regions and pinpoint the exact locations of those crucial on-off switches, the promoters, the enhancers, the silencers, all the things that conducts the incredibly complex orchestra of our genes. We're finally starting to read the entire instruction manual of life. And this quote from the source material, it just sums it all up perfectly. This isn't some niche tool for one specific problem. This is a foundational technology. It is fundamentally reshaping everything from how we diagnose diseases to how we engineer new biological systems. The potential is clearly immense. But, as with any revolutionary technology, we are still in the early days. And there are some pretty major hurdles we have to get over before this technology reaches its full potential. So we're really facing three big challenges here. First, even though we have tons of raw DNA sequences, high-quality labeled data, where we know what a sequence does, is still pretty scarce and mostly limited to humans and a few lab animals. Second, the cost to train these massive models is astronomical. It takes an immense amount of computing power. And third, there's the black box problem. We know the AI is making good predictions, but understanding why it's making them, interpreting its logic, that's a whole new frontier of research in itself. But look, these are challenges to be solved, not dead ends. We started this whole journey with a simple question. What if DNA is a language? Well, now we know that it is, and we've built an AI that's learning to speak it fluently. And that leaves us with an even more powerful question for the future. Now that AI can read the book of life, what will we ask it to write next?